Nishka Pika Lima Wayneswiane. I am Red. I am the station manager here at Daybreak Star Radio, and I am super honored and humbled to have Blackbraid on for this interview.
Yeah, and likewise, I'm going by my radio name, Lanunashish, which is Shumash for a supernatural power, often can also be used as demon, which is, fitting for our metal genre usually. And yeah, I'm super excited to have you on.
Oh, thank you. I'm really pumped to be here, honestly. Like, I love the radio station, so thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell everybody who you are, your tribal affiliation, where you're located, that kind of stuff.
My name's John. I am the sole musician behind Blackbraid, which is like indigenous black metal. I live in the northeast, the Adirondacks to be specific, like way upstate New York. I've lived like in and around this area most of my entire life for the most part. And then when it comes to tribal affiliation, I actually am not affiliated with anyone. That's actually part of the thing, part of my thing with Blackbraid, I would say. I was adopted at birth, so I, was raised in a white community, and I grew up surrounded by white people pretty much, and I didn't have any sort of indigenous. I didn't really have much exposure to like my culture or my heritage or whatever, like minimal when I was growing up. And obviously, I'm a metalhead, and metal has always been like a big thing for me, a way to escape. And I've been listening to metal since I was a child, and that's like one of my major focuses with Blackbraid is like being an indigenous guy who grew up without like any indigenous role models in my life. Like I really turned to metal when I was a kid, and metal was kind of like an escape for me. And I've always loved metal, and just thinking like how different that could have played out if all the bands I listened to weren't white when I was young, and like, just kind of, I know there's a lot of kids out there today, even in the same situation that I am, where, they're brown as hell, but they don't really have exposure to their culture at all. And that's kind of like one of the things I want to achieve with Blackbraid is like, kind of just give these kids who love metal, like some metal to listen to that's not made by 6 white dudes, but yeah, I guess that's about it for that. But
thanks. Well, so on that, when I realized reading up on you that you did all this yourself, that's some talent. Like, how do you make your music? Because it's in depth.
Yeah.
It's not just a couple little tracks playing.
Yeah. Well, it changes, I guess. I write songs like however I'm feeling, but I don't do it entirely myself. Like my buddy Neil records me. He's like an audio engineer, and he helps me out a lot. And then me and him work on the drums together, but he does like the tracking when it comes down to it for drums, because he's a drummer at heart, and he's just way better than me at drums. So like we'll kind of feel out the drums together, and he'll lay the final track for them. But other than that, I record everything else is me on there.
Are you playing guitar and bass, and then you're mixing it all together? Are you actually playing the instruments?
Yeah. I do all the guitars and bass and whatnot, and the vocals, of course. And I do the flute. The flute's me as well, and whatever else you might hear in there.
Are you familiar with Leviathan?
I am. Yeah, it's very similar.
Right.
Concept. Yeah.
So that's where I was like, wow, this is like Leviathan at the next level, right? Of being, and by that I mean like really like what you just talked about, elevating the native metal voice, right? Because I do think that the indigeneity and metal music, and just like even underground hip hop, like they go together because it's about resistance against the mainstream. And it's really about like DIY, right? Like doing it yourself, progressing yourself as an individual, and when you do that, we progress as like a movement. And so that's what I found very like inspiring about everything you just said. And then also like reading up on like a recent interview you did. And that's when I was like, realized like, oh, you're this multi instrumentalist, like Leviathan, like, whoa. But I wanted to take a step back and ask you, like, who were some of those bands that in the metal genre that you that really inspired you and like kept you in this?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. It's really hard to pinpoint it. Like, my first exposure to metal was like mainstream US metal, like stuff like Metallica and Judas Priest and stuff, you know. And that stuff came in when I was really young, you know, because you can hear it on the radio and stuff. And I think by the time I was in like middle school, I started branching out and finding like more extreme stuff. And you know, I'm almost 33 too. I'm gonna be 33 in a month. So like when I was young, there wasn't internet or anything, so you kind of really had to do some digging back then to find stuff. But I mean, when it comes to black metal specifically, I think probably like Dissection would be a huge influence on me. I like Sargeist a lot, that Finnish style stuff. I think if I were to pinpoint an actual artist, like it would probably be Dissection that's influenced my actual music the most. I really like Dissection, and you know, I've been listening to them for 20 years and I'm still not bored of them. So
yeah. Yeah, I think that says a lot, like about with bands. You know, it's interesting. Like I keep my ear to the ground to a lot of like Northwest, because the Northwest is really rich in all kinds of like metal. And when I was listening to you, I also got vibes of some Pacific Northwest black metal, like Agalock. Have you heard of Agalock?
Oh yeah, I do love me some Agalock.
Yeah,
and yeah, I mean, it's also like, you know, I've been to the Northwest once or twice, and you know, we're all on the same island, and it is like when you go there, it's so similar to here. We're like almost on the same latitude, you know.
yeah,
And like the climate and the plants and the animals, like it's also similar. Like it's pretty easy to see the parallels between our sound, because I mean, when you're writing about nature, like the nature in these two places is so similar too. We're on different coasts, but you know, our forests are pretty similar. I mean, obviously they have a ton of differences too, but like when you look at the rest of the country, like and then you look at like the Cascadian Mountains and the Adirondacks, like we're pretty much like we're the north section with you know, the cold winters that we get hammered by snow, and there's pine everywhere, boulders, you know. So yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, I think most of the good black metal in the US, I mean, not all of it, but for the most part, like a lot of it was coming out of the Northwest exclusively. And like, I think the mountains there probably had a really big part to play in that. I guess the Adirondacks are like so unpopulated that there's not, you know, there's zero scene here. There's not even a, you know, a country scene here. Like there's nothing. So I guess I got lucky because I don't really have much competition like all those guys. There's, you know, there's like 50 black metal bands in the, in the Pacific Northwest, but like out here I'm kind of on my own and just doing my own thing, and it's kind of refreshing, I guess.
You definitely are doing your own thing. On that, your lyrics are really poetic. Like you're clearly a poet. You've clearly, or at least it feels like to me, like you've been writing for a while, or at least you've done that internal introspection to figure out what words would have meaning for yourself and beyond. From the first release you had, I put written down, the line that "and the river of time will run through my veins eternal." It's just lovely. How did you learn to write like that?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it really just goes back to nature. I mean, the thing with Blackbraid is I don't write, you know, like black metal is usually like a lot of it's very depressive or satanic and stuff, and like I love that stuff, but it's not like it's not really me, I guess, you know. So I just try to write songs that I are genuine and come from my heart and that I can identify with. And I think like when you do it that way and you get an idea going, it kind of just flows. Like you don't really have to force it if you're not, it's not like fabricated. I kind of just wait until stuff comes to me, I guess.
There's I want to stick with this like nature element. Have you seen those memes or like the GIFs or GIFs of like, nature is metal AF kind of thing? It's like a bear eating an eagle or something like that. But, I think this is totally true about metal and nature because they both bring out and emphasize this raw beauty and brutality that like coexist with one another. And these two things can be true, right, within the same existence. And so especially when I listen to black metal, I feel this. And I'm a snowboarder. And so like, if I'm going to be snowboarding and listen to music, like bombing down a mountain, it's usually to like Agalock or like Death Heaven or Dissection or these other like black metal bands that create this this sonic atmosphere that like is reflective of nature. And so I was just curious, how you feel, see, and hear nature when you're composing music. Like, what are some of the landscapes that come to your mind, or how are you influenced by the landscapes?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's not really like I can't really give it a definitive answer to that because it just comes. It's so different every time, like I was spending a lot of time at this river near me when I wrote the river song, and Sacandaga is also kind of like an ode to the Sacandaga River Valley, and it's you never really know like what you're gonna learn when you go into nature or what you're gonna experience. And like you said, it's kind of like lawlessness and chaos, and it fits really well with black metal. But there's also there's beauty, extreme beauty and extreme sadness, and it's like all kind of rolled into one. And that that obviously really inspires me, but I don't really go into nature to try and write songs, I guess. I kind of just do it. I used to maybe, but now I kind of just do it for fun, and I don't like put my pressure on myself to write anything. A lot of the times I don't even bring a book anymore, like a notebook, I use to write in. But a lot of times I just try to go out there and enjoy it. And maybe I'll have like a meaningful experience or something, and it might be a week or two before I even write anything about it. Like I'll let some time pass and think on it, and sometimes I mean more. I go out all the time, so more often than not, like 90% of the time I go out, I just don't write anything. I just hang out and enjoy it and hike or fish or whatever I'm doing. But like, I guess when the inspiration strikes, I've learned not to look for it anymore. So I really try not to I don't like set a time for me like, oh, I'm going to go write a song today. It comes out so much better when I try not to force it. And I kind of just try to let it roll recently, I guess.
So it's not you finding it, but it finds you in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so would you say most of your like lyrical themes are like nature based, or?
Yeah, definitely. Like nature and mysticism and personal experience, I would say, but I definitely don't write about anything that I don't feel is genuine.
I think that shows in the music.
Yeah.
So on that,
Thanks.
a lot of our listeners, and a lot of people just in the general world outside of Native America don't really connect metal with Native America at all. And I actually think metal is right there. I personally feel like punk rock and metal saved my life as a youth. And it's, I can see, and you said it a lot in your music for sure. And it's your reconnection with your indigeneity is really apparent in all the things that you're doing in your merch, in your photos, and in your songs. How do you weave that through, like in the music itself? How do you weave in the Native American aspects?
Yeah, I guess it's well, it's kind of like I said before, like I don't really try at all. It's just I love black metal, so I want to write black metal, but I also don't want to write anything that's not from the heart, you know? So like I'm a native dude living in the woods, and like if I want to write about personal experience, like that's what it's always going to come down to, I guess. You know, I'm not going to go make up a story or write about some medieval fantasy. Like I just want to write metal that is emotional and like means something to me. So I guess like it just comes out like that by default, because like that's just the kind of guy I am, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I was also reading in I think a recent interview that you did, that you were talking about like speaking about history, right? And speaking about Native history. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how it influences your music?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it doesn't influence it too much, to be honest. Like, sometimes I'll write about history, or like past events or, you know, present events. But again, it really just comes down to like, me writing about what I feel I want to write about at that time. And like, I'd say like 99% of the time, I just end up writing about nature, personal experiences. But like sometimes there is like stuff weighing on my mind, or I'll be like extra wrapped up in history or something, and I will write about something in the past or even in the present. But it's really hard to say because I never really aim to do it, you know. I kind of just try to write songs that work, and I don't ever try to force it. But if I if I write something and I feel like it doesn't fit, then I'll just throw it out. So definitely debate a lot over like what I want to put on the album and what I don't. And I just want it to come out genuine, I guess, is my main feeling towards it.
Yeah. And it's interesting when it's very fascinating that, you're an individual who does all of this, right? And one thing that I've picked up on is that the metal community that I've experienced here is very community based, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is this like love for one another. And I think in the past, and maybe you've had this experience at shows, like, you get in the pit and you're throwing elbows and kind of creeping and crawling around in the circle, that if people go down, then other people pick you up, right? And like, no one's leaving you left to like get hurt. And I think oftentimes metal gets this bad rap of like people are out to hurt each other. They conflate being aggressive with being violent, right? And like wanting to hurt. But usually it's quite the opposite. It's like we want to get out this like emotion, or we want to just express ourselves this way. So I was just curious, like how you have experienced metal as a community.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Metal is a community just like overflowing with love, it seems like. And, I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for metal, like it's really the metal community that has made Blackbraid successful. People, supporting me and giving me, everything that I need, and really just helping me succeed. And that seems to be like a pretty common thing in metal. Like, it's just a community filled with love. We're all kind of outcasts and we all watch each other's backs. I mean, I think I remember I was talking to this guy from BBC last week, and he was asking me about, like they're over in the UK or whatever. And he was asking me about like how natives experience racism, when we're growing up and stuff. And like, he was asking about, what how the metal community was was like in relation to that. And I pretty much told him like, when I was growing up, like metal shows were the one place you can go as a brown dude and like, no, you're not going to have issues. Like, you just don't have to worry about that sort of judgment or anything. And within the metal community, I mean, it's always just such a tight knit, loving community. And I guess we like to scream a lot, so people don't like people give us a bad rap or whatever. But I mean, it's probably the most accepting community out there. Like you don't see like rappers or like indie artists backing each other up like that. Like it really does seem like metal is like a really tight knit community of people that just have love for music and each other.
Yeah, that's something I've experienced, and I've definitely, I would say, in the last like 10 years, there has been an increasing numbers of attendees and bands of brown and black people, and especially of other gender identities as well. Like, really, I think metal has evolved from this, the version that it was in like the 80s and 90s into a more sophisticated, refined way of being, right? Even though we're still sticking with the screaming and the loud music and the sort of chaotic structure. I mean, there is structure in the chaos that is brought within the music. But it has been I'm very happy that you have recognized that, over the past, that it's, going into a metal community is like probably one of the more accepting communities. And in my experience, when I mean, there are like Nazi metal, right? And there are like white supremacist metal and whatnot, but that's usually, they make that known. And
yeah.
So we know not to like step into that. And that seems to be really dying off.
Yeah. I mean, especially now, I mean, things are just like more open, I think, because of the internet and technology and stuff. And it's like pretty easy to like spot that stuff and like stamp it out before it like gains momentum now. As like, it was pretty easy to fly under the radar like 15, 20 years ago. And it isn't really the same now,
Can you speak to the outpouring of love and support that you've been getting? Like, how has this experience been?
Yeah, I mean, it's been insane. I don't really have any words for it. There's so much black metal. I mean, there's some guy releasing a solo black metal project right now. There's probably 3 albums dropping today. So like, it's just like such an oversaturated genre, and there's so many people doing it at this point, and it's everywhere. And it's like, knowing all that, I didn't really expect Blackbraid to be anything. I kind of just released these songs for myself, and I would have been happy if we got like 1,000 views on YouTube or whatever. Like, I just kind of wanted to do it for myself, and I definitely had zero expectations going in. I definitely never expected it to gain momentum, especially like within this amount of time. Like, it's only really been like 6 or 7 months since I created it, the entire project. So, I think I put my first song out maybe the last week of February. So it's kind of just been snowballing since then. And yeah, it's been surreal. Like, even today, like it happens every day that you just don't expect. Like, everyone just keeps giving me support and love, and like, it seems too good to be true most of the time. But
yeah, but you deserve it.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're super talented. They really appreciate it. Thank you for putting your music out to the world, for sure. On that, what advice would you have for an up and coming Native artist, Native youth who might be thinking about making music or doing something? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to do it. Just go for it. And my main advice, just what I said about the way I write my own music is like, just be genuine and don't be afraid to write about Native experiences or trauma or ceremony or anything. We all have like really strong thoughts and emotion on these things, and that's what music is for. It's like an outlet for your emotions. But when it comes down to it, like there's not really much music about the Native experience. And the more of us that focus on writing and stuff, like that's the only way it's going to become a thing, like we got to write it and then it'll just exist. So yeah, I would just say go for it. And, don't try to, definitely don't try to conform to like what you think the genre needs, whatever genre it is you're writing in, like if you're a native youth and you want to write some music, just write about what's important to you. And I think that's really all that matters.
So do you have any, are you thinking about touring or plans, getting a band formulated, sort of a touring band, or what's next for you?
Yeah, we played our first show in LA on Saturday.
Wow.
It was sold out. Yeah. It sold out weeks in advance. That was pretty sweet. Our second show is in 3 weeks in New York City, and that one's also sold out.
Quite a commute to your first shows.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to stop. I haven't announced any other dates, but there's definitely a bunch of dates out there that are, I'll be around next year for sure, a lot. So
that's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. Like, yeah, you went down to LA. Did you have any supporting bands with you?
Yeah, I played. I headlined, which is nuts. That wasn't really supposed to happen because it was our first show ever. But I had 2 other Indigenous bands with me. That's like a huge focus of mine. It's just like bringing Indigenous talent with me when I can. Like 4 out of the 5 guys in our live lineup are native as well. So it's like that was a big thing for me, is really kind of having that image and keeping it Indigenous as much as possible.
Right.
But the same thing, yeah, we played with a native band, Metzli, from LA, and then some guys from Southern California, Crematory Stench. They're death metal, and they're also Indigenous. So it was the 3 of us, and yeah, it was an all native metal show.
That's dope. Are there other native bands that you want other people to be aware of other than Metzli and Crematory Stench?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Pan American Native Front is a big one. He's from Chicago. That's who my October show we're playing with, Pan American Native Front. Isashlan, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm so bad. 2 of my guitarists are actually in Isashlan, and they're also playing that night with us. October 7th, they're in New York City. That show is actually, like, if you want native metal, like, you should just take a look at that show, because it's a 3-day festival, and like
cool.
More than 3/4 of the bands on that lineup are Indigenous.
Wow.
It was organized by Night of the Pale Moon, who's like an Indigenous metal label from LA, and those guys are awesome, and I love them. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of the focus, at least for now, is like to try and focus on that as much as possible. But I'm trying to think, as far as other native metal goes, I mean, there's those guys. Maleficent is a really cool one. Fairnock, I'm a huge fan of. He's from Canada. He's also a solo dude. Man, it's so hard because I know there's like dozens of them, and I always like forget when I put on the spot of like who I want. Jayaba was one that I really love. They're broken up now, I think, but they're from Canada. I mean, I grew up listening to them a little bit more. They're a little bit older. Yeah, there's a lot out there, and I think it's like kind of finally starting to gain some traction, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today, John. It's been such a pleasure getting to interview you. It's thank you for coming to the Daybreak Star Radio Network, and we really look forward to everything that you put out in the future.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.